Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting each episode by saying thank you. I feel so very blessed with this podcast, and always love by saying thank you. It's started as a passion project, and it continues to be a way we give back. And my objective when I started was to simplify spirituality and guide people on their journey, on the spiritual journey. With the messages we receive on a weekly basis, clearly achieving that. So thank you for allowing us to support you. Thank you for allowing us to hold your hand on your spiritual journey. We're recording this in Feb. It's going to go release on February the 10th. So this being the month of love, I'm sending you all so much love and light. Thank you, and definitely feeling the love of the universe. So thank you. I am an Akashic record reader, an Akashic trainer, spiritual coach, mentor, as well as a podcast host and podcast creator. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to release their programming, to truly understand why they're here, to live their best life. And I really do feel like we've been pushed to do much more of that now. So I get to do that through Akashic record reading, through mentorship, through this podcast, through so many different vehicles. And I'm so feeling so blessed with what I get to do. This podcast won't be where it is today without my beautiful co-host, the stunning, the healer extraordinaire, and now published author, Stacey Brown. Stacey, I have to do that, you know. I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, buddy. It's good to be here. Friends, I'm really excited about this episode. My name is Stacey. I'm an intuitive. I do readings for people from all around the world. I am also an Akashic record reader and a spiritual coach and mentor, and a recently published author. My book, Journey to Soul Center, Discovering the Gift of Surrender, is available on Amazon and Audible.
Thank you, Stace. So this, bear in mind, we're releasing on the 10th, and obviously we've got Valentine's Day this week. We thought we'd talk about love. So we're going to talk about soul contracts in love, lessons from relationships. It feels like, sure, February being love and everything else, it does feel like a period of, and it has for a while, where we're ending so many karmic cycles, we're ending so many soul contracts, and we're beginning new ones. It's that the vibrational shift that the planet's going through, shifting from divine masculine to divine feminine, and there's so much shifting happening on the planet. And along with that, there is a lot of shift in our soul contracts related to love. Whether that's happened over the last few months, maybe the last year, or it's happening now, there is a lot going on. And I'll give you my perspective of what a soul contract is as we start this conversation. And that is, before we incarnate into our physical body, our soul knows what it's here to experience. And maybe it's unconditional love and then breakup. Maybe it's a loving connection. Maybe it's a karmic release. And whatever that is, the soul finds other souls to experience that together. Everything's a co-creation. So if you're meant to experience heartbreak, then you find another soul to experience heartbreak with. Whoever's causing the heartbreak and whatever that means, it's all related to whatever you're here to experience, whatever karma you're here to release. So then you have that agreement with another soul, and you have all these soul contracts before you incarnate into your physical body. And then when you incarnate into physical body, if you remembered that you were meant to experience pain, so much pain or so much heartbreak or whatever that may be, if you remembered that, then obviously you're gonna deny yourself that experience. So that's where the veil of amnesia comes in. That's where we get a veil where we don't remember. But I believe that through our life, the remembering starts to come through. It also starts to come through when we start to ask ourselves some questions. And how is this soul contract complete? How is this soul contract serving me? What's my relationship with this soul contract? You start to get some more insight because your awareness is in you, and your questions that you ask yourself really help you to understand your connection. And obviously, if your questions are in victim mode, this always happens to me. I knew it was going to break my heart. I knew she was going to break my heart. Then that's where you don't get quality answers. When you start to ask, well, hold on, what was my lesson here? What do I need to integrate? And I get that's easy for me to say, during this time, but your answers are in you. So whatever you're going through, ask yourself those questions. Ask yourself what's happening inside. Maybe you start to get a different set of answers. So Stacey, what does soul contracts mean for you? And then also when I talk about love in this month, how are you feeling?
Well, I feel like I have a lot of experience in this area. I've been married a couple of times and felt each time that I was with a partner that I was going to be with for the long haul. And that's not what happened. And I believe that a lot of us feel that way when we enter into a soul contract with someone. We believe that it's for life. And sometimes that's not the case. And it's interesting because when we surrender those contracts that are no longer serving us, we make room for the ones that do. And it's been a powerful process for me to separate and divorce from my partner that I had, 20 plus years with on and off, and watch him move forward in his life in one direction and me go in a completely different direction. And in that space, we've both found new partners. And it has been a powerful process because I wouldn't be with the person that I'm with today had I not gone through the experiences that I've gone through. And yet some of them were so deeply painful. And still to this day, I feel pain over the loss, even though I've moved on.
It's interesting when you say move on, right? It's just, our soul contracts, especially with partners, they can evolve, they can shift. And this is where I say things like pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, because when we stay with somebody where a soul contract's done, that's when the suffering happens. And you look at it when you have a soul contract with somebody to experience love, you are, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're aligned, right? You're maybe your values are aligned, but you're aligned in spending your life together in theory, right? But then you both go through a period of growth, right? Spiritual, personal, whatever that may be. And even if you're aligned at the beginning, you do start to drift apart. Your values start to shift. What you're going through shifts, and it does change. And this is where sometimes we stay with somebody because the fairy tale we remember, and we're trying to go back to something that maybe we had or that we wanted when we got together with that person. And it's that romantic notion, right? It's also the fear of, well, if I let this person go, what's it going to be replaced with? The fear of being alone. It's really interesting when you start looking at your relationships, and it's a good thing to do to look at your past relationships and ask yourself, what did you learn? What was your lesson? What was your karmic lesson in that relationship? And actually, as we move on to that, let me talk a little bit about soul contracts, karmic relationships, and twin flames. Soul contracts for me are lessons, are things you're meant to experience with another soul. So it can be romantic, it can be platonic, it can be a family member, it could be a really close friend, could be somebody that you regard as an enemy, but it's all about experiencing something, and that's what for me is a soul contract. And some soul contracts are for life, some are there for a reason, and some are there just there for a season. But I do believe that any soul contract you have with somebody is for a reason. It's sort of co-creation you're meant to experience with somebody else. And when you think about karmic lessons, karmic partnerships, a lot of karmic partnerships are relationships. This is where you have some karma from maybe a past life, ancestral or personal, and you're meant to experience something to release that karma. And again, maybe it's a loving relationship that, or maybe it's one that starts loving and there's some pain involved for whatever reason. That's a karmic relationship. That's where you have some karma together. And a lot of karmic release a lot of the time does involve some sort of pain. And this is where when you start to become a student with your relationships, you start to understand that actually there was a lot of lessons there. There was a lot of karma to be released. This is where maybe getting an Akashic record reading gives you that sort of insight. And twin flames, again, we could do probably a whole separate episode on it, but twin flames are, again, here to teach you something. But I don't believe twin flames are always meant to be together. Twin flames really do trigger you. They're really there as you are fragments of the same soul, but you're there to really have such a deep connection. You trigger yourself in such a deep way that you expand. And you can be together with a twin flame for sure, but you've definitely got to work through your healing, what you're here to learn from each other, and it's that all the connections, when you meet them, you feel something inside you. You feel that you know this person. But it's always good to kind of sit there and ask, well, hold on, what type of, and maybe ask your guides, is this a soul contract that I'm meant to just be friends with this person or be connected to learn something? Is it a karmic relationship so that, maybe we're meant to be together and release some karma or experience some karma together? Or is it twin flames? And you could lose yourself in Google with some of this stuff, and I wouldn't go too deep. I would just sit with it and really ask, what's my lesson in this journey? And I'll talk more about my relationships as we go through the episode, but as an example, one of my exes that I was engaged to, she's the one that introduced me to Sidra. And if anyone's been listening to this episode, Sidra was my guide on this plane, my friend. She's now one of my spiritual guides because she passed away, aged only 30 years on fire. But my ex introduced me to her. And would we have met anyway? Probably. It's a soul contract. But, isn't it interesting that I was introduced to somebody that changed my life, that really kind of guided me to the healer I am, by an ex? Maybe that was the purpose. Maybe that was the journey. And so, Stacey, I'd love for you to talk about some of your lessons in love. You talked about your ex, and I met you when you were with your ex, and I can see how much you've healed, how much the healer in you is activated. You've shifted your life multiple times since I've known you in the past 4 or so years, and it's just I'm just curious, how do you feel about your karmic lessons in that relationship, and any advice that you have for anyone that's listening that maybe that's going through something painful?
It's still challenging for me to talk about it. I've done a lot of healing in this area, but I still have this kind of tender spot. I believe that my ex and I were brought back together. For those who don't know, we were married, we divorced, and then we remarried. And I believe with everything in me that we were back together to help navigate through some challenging times with our children. But ultimately, those challenges with our children were what broke us. And the way that we each handled moving forward was very different from each other. I became very vocal and very passionate and wanted to do all I could to serve others and educate people and use my gifts and abilities. And he really shut down. I think it triggered something in him from his past and some of the struggles that he had been through. And it made it really hard for him to communicate what he was going through. And ultimately for him, it was easier to move on to someone else than it was to stay together. And for me, the lessons are still coming. I'm still looking at that relationship and reflecting on the good parts and the things that we had in common and the differences and what split us. But ultimately, I know we were together for a reason. And once that reason no longer existed, the relationship fizzled out. And it's interesting because I met you during that time. And when I was staying with you for a month in the UK was when I knew my relationship was ending. And I was in the process of writing my book and channeling our program with you and really growing and understanding myself in a way that I never had before. And he was at home on a completely different path. And he chose to continue on that path with a new woman that he met through a recovery program. And they've since married and joined their home, and he's moved out of the state. And I have found a new relationship and have been in a completely different space than I've ever been in before. And I have to say, I don't know if I had stayed in that relationship, I don't know that I would have had the courage to use my voice in the way that I do. I don't know that I would have been capable of helping people in the way that I do right now if I had stayed in that relationship. I would probably still be doing hair and probably still in the same environment and feeling misunderstood and somewhat depressed. And that brings me to another soul contract that I feel that I have, and that's with you, Nims. I mean, when I met you, I just instantly connected with you from the moment that I first heard your voice. And we formed this bond that is super powerful, and it surpasses our work that we do together. I hold a spot for you in my heart and in my life that no one else fills. And I think it just goes to show you that not all soul contracts are romantic. Some of them are platonic and can be just as powerful and impactful in our lives as those that have a romantic place in our hearts.
You make so many valid points in that whole, and it just the fact, if I start with the fact you're still learning from that relationship, this is the thing. It's not just because we split from somebody doesn't mean the lessons stop, right? Because things come up when we're ready to heal. So there are things that are going to come up in long-term relationships that come up when they're ready to be released. And it's important to remember that, right? It's that knowing that you spent a large portion of your life with that person, right? So there's going to be things that you remember. I guess it's interesting. Was it a choice to leave him? I mean, we met at a time. I feel that you were ready for a release. You were ready for some sort of upgrade, and we had a soul contract for us to go through that, right? You coming here, you had a safe space to really find your voice, to share your truth, and it shifted something in you, right? And sometimes when you're stuck in a relationship and it becomes familiar, it becomes normal, especially when you're in that environment and you don't find space from it. Not everybody can take a few weeks out and go and visit a friend, but changing your orbit, changing where you are for a while does help. But if you can't do that, then asking yourself some questions about, is your lessons from this relationship to be in person complete? How is this relationship serving you? And Stacey, I remember that you were in a dark space in that relationship, but sometimes you weren't even aware of it, and it's just interesting. But it's, again, you raised another point. Every relationship, I believe, serves a purpose, right? Do you have a soul contract with everybody in your world? And the way I look at it is, you're almost a hero of your story, if that's the way you want to look at it. And you look at the people and the roles in your life, whether they be romantic, family, friendship, work, whatever the type of relationship, everybody in your world is serving a purpose. Everybody in your world is actually serving the purpose you asked them to as a soul. Everything in your external world is a result of something in your internal world. And effectively, it's the mirror to you, right? It's that. And when you start looking at it that way, you start to realize that, and you start to ask yourself, well, what roles are these people serving? And in relationships, a lot of people talk about repeating patterns. I always attract the same type of person. I always attract If you're a guy, always attract someone maybe like your mom, or if you're a girl, someone like your dad. And it's just interesting when you start to really ask yourself that question. I don't actually believe in repeat patterns. What I believe is, if you're repeating a cycle and you're going out with somebody similar, then it's not a repeat cycle. It's just a deeper learning from that same cycle. But that awareness of you asking yourself that question, why do I always attract the same type of person, actually means that you're ready to change that pattern. Because if this is it, I believe we learn so much more from our romantic partnerships than maybe we do from our non-one. I mean, we do pick our family to expand us. I talk about that a lot in the previous episodes. We do talk about, we pick our family. They know us at a deep human level. They can trigger us like probably nobody else. And for sure, we pick them for a lesson. We don't always pick them to love us. And that's the mistake sometimes we make. We expect our family to love us. That's not always the case. Yes, you have a soul contract with them. Yes, you have a relationship to expand you, but they're not always there to love you. And
I
you
can
think about, why do
attest
some
to
relationships?
I can attest
Yeah,
to
why do we? Yeah, I mean, it's so true, Stacey. Yes, you can. I mean, I'm blessed, right? I have a lot of love around me for my family. They don't necessarily understand the spiritual side of me, but I've really spent time understanding my connection with each of them. And yes, Stacey, why don't you tell us about this? Is the other thing, and Stacey, I'd love for you to talk about it. Our relationships with our family are definitely here to expand us. You pick them at birth, and they teach you something. And I think about my siblings. Well, growing up, they could get under my skin like nobody else, and we'd argue. And I didn't have a voice growing up, and I found my voice as I grew older. And it's just interesting when you start to become a student. You look at your relationships from a non-programming perspective, i.e., sometimes we get really upset with our parents, or they don't love us, and we compare ourselves to others. And of course, there's an expectation there. But when you maybe take a step back and have no expectations, then maybe you start to realize that actually your family and all your relationships are serving the purpose that you asked them to. And maybe the divine mother, divine father relationship you're looking for, divine sibling, can come from somebody else. Go on, Stace. I'd love for you to talk about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a home that was very divided from the very beginning. My father was a narcissist and was extremely verbally abusive and controlling. And my mother was very passive and would sit back and just kind of watch while he, took over with his ways of doing things in the house. And it became an environment for my siblings and I where we would throw each other under the bus in order to save ourselves because we were so afraid of living in that environment. And ultimately, what happened was a complete breakdown of that family unit. My father left my mother when I was 22 years old, very publicly, very abruptly, and left her for another woman. And I watched my mom go through heartbreak. And I tried over the years to nurture relationships with each one of them respectively. But ultimately, when I went through the challenges with my own children, it became the straw that broke the camel's back. And I realized that I was looking for something with both of my parents that they were unable to give me. And I made the decision to separate them from my life. And I have not been in contact with either one of my parents for 5 years, over 5 years. And it has its challenges because there's so much grief, right? I wanted a relationship with my parents that they could not give me. And I had to make a decision as to how I was going to handle that. It's a beautiful thing to have a family unit, but when you're raised in a toxic environment and the toxicity continues, you're faced with a decision. And I had to go with what was healthy for me and what was safe for me. And those were relationships that I didn't feel safe in. I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel unconditionally loved. And I made the decision to separate myself from those relationships and move forward with different relationships. And it's been interesting because people have come into my life who have mothered me or parented me, and it's people that I would never have expected. And so that role is still being filled in different ways. It looks very different than what I could have ever expected. And it's hard for me as a parent because I can't imagine going down that path with my own children. You know, I love them deeply and unconditionally, and I want to be a part of their lives. And so there's parts of it that are still hard for me to accept. It's hard for me to understand how parents can have love that is conditional. And yet that's what I was taught.
It's really interesting, actually. You bring up so many valid points in terms of, and for our listeners, if you didn't have and you don't have the loving parents that you expected, maybe the loving siblings, if you looked at your life and is there anyone else in your world that maybe took up that energetic space? Because there is always, I actually believe the universe does love us unconditionally, but has a role to play to ensure that we complete the lessons that we need to as a soul, right? And it means that if you're meant to experience deep pain through family, then maybe that's what you experience. But what if the universe provides you other souls that can still energetically take that role? And it's interesting if we, just as a reminder, if you do look at, if you do have a situation where you get a lot of pain from your parents, and do spend time and ask, kind of, what are my learnings here? Why would I pick the family that I did? And I get it. Sometimes I trigger people when I say, well, hold on, you picked as a soul your family. And if they've given you a lot of pain, you'd wonder, well, hold on, why as a soul would I pick this? It is because you had karmic lessons to release, right? You had karma ancestrally or personally to release. And I do feel like in this lifetime, especially because of the shift the planet's going through, that all of us have contracted deeper lessons than maybe the last generations did. But again, if you ask yourself a different set of questions and you start to get a different learning, does it stop the pain? And Stacey was saying, she still feels it now, and maybe it doesn't stop the pain, but increases your awareness. And from there, it allows you to maybe forgive yourself. Forgiveness is a whole different topic, but it's, forgiving your parents doesn't mean that you need to let them in your life. It just means you stop giving your power away to them by just letting them go and say, okay, you know what? I've learned my lessons here. I forgive and let you go. And the same with your own lessons. Are you holding on to your expectations, your programming of what you felt a parent should be like? We can't control that, right? It takes two. And, kind of going back to relationships, the pain that we experience from a heartbreak is probably the deepest. It depends. There's who decides what's deeper, but it's definitely a different sort of pain than you experience from a family member. When I look at my life, I've had a few long-term relationships, never been married, engaged once. But I have had a conversation with my soul and my guides, and I'm like, well, hold on, why couldn't I live a normal life, whatever normal looks like, get married, having 2.4 kids, or whatever that looks like. But I have taken time to experience how my soul has expanded through that period. What the relationships I've had have taught me. Like I said, the previous ex, the one I was engaged to, she actually introduced me to Sidra. So I kind of get, and I've spent time trying to understand each of those relationships. I also know in the conversation I have with my soul, also know and can see how much my soul has expanded in this life. And the insight I got is I wouldn't have expanded in the same way if I got married and had a long-term relationship with my kids. That would have taken my time away from my soul expansion. Is that hard to hear? Yeah, there was a time that was hard to hear because, well, hold on, why couldn't I have contracted the same as everybody else, but I understand it now. I also have 4 brothers, 4 sisters, 10 nephews, 3 nieces, and I also know that if I had kids, I wouldn't have the special connection I have with every one of my nephews and nieces. They know they can come to me and have a different connection with them. I don't have the same connection as a parent, but I have held space in their world where they've shifted because of conversations we've had, or they can come to me for answers that don't have the parental energy. It's like things like where do we go for college, university? Do we move away? All of that is a parent. There's going to be an element of maybe wanting your kids to stay close by and all that. I will never tell any of my nephews and nieces what to do, but I'll always hold their space while they figure it out. So do I still wonder why I picked a certain path I did? Yeah. Do I accept it? Sure. Definitely understand it. But it's going back to some of the relationships and the pain that you experience. I mean, there's definitely lessons from the pain, right? There's definitely deeper spiritual meaning in the heartbreak and separation. So you had a soul contract with somebody to fall in love with them. And then as part of that next phase of the soul contract, you're there to experience heartbreak and separation. And sometimes you get so much more lessons in that heartbreak and separation, standing in your power. But knowing and asking if my soul contract was complete, especially with a loving relationship, can be hard because, again, we see things with rose-tinted glasses. We see things in terms of how we felt things were going to go. But asking and having an honest conversation with yourself and asking, is that soul contract complete? And then kind of going on the deep learning on what was your lessons, forgiving yourself, healing. It is a lifelong thing, right? You still have, as Stacey was talking about, karmic ties and emotional baggage that goes with it. And breaking free from toxic soul contracts that have patterns of codependency, narcissistic tendencies can be hard. And Stacey, again, I'd love for you to talk about, the ending with your ex, and knowing that maybe that soul contract's complete, the process of forgiveness and healing, and kind of standing in your power, because you're a great example of somebody. It's interesting when you look from the outside, somebody I've seen go through deep healing and still going through deep healing with somebody you had a deep soul contract with, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm still in the process of healing for sure. I have moved on, right? And I'm in a loving, committed relationship now, but there's still lessons that I'm integrating from the past and still a process of releasing and understanding those lessons that I'm going through. There are days where I don't think about it and I am in the present and I'm excited about the future and I'm in a great space. And then there are other days where it creeps in and I reflect and think about the pain of the loss of so many years of commitment to each other and what that has meant for me. But ultimately, I think our relationship served a powerful purpose in raising our children and bringing our children into the world. And there's still a layer of acceptance happening that that contract is done. So I think there's still a mourning that's happening, even though I've moved on.
Isn't that interesting, right? This is what I was talking about, the cycles of learning. You don't need to be with somebody to still be learning from that relationship. And the deeper karmic relationships, for me, they feel like lifetimes of releasing. It's like the end of a deep karmic relationship. Especially when you've been somebody for so many years, right? there's going to be things that keep coming up, and you carry you into your next relationship. That's always the danger, right? Is that the pain, the forgiveness, you carry on into your next relationship. And this is where your expectations can sometimes come from. But again, this is where asking those questions and really learning about your growing and understanding what you learn from a relationship increases your awareness. And that awareness is critical on the spiritual journey, right? Without that awareness, you can't heal, you can't move on. But awareness on its own isn't enough. Accepting that you made the decision, accepting that you made the decisions that you are, accepting that you are who you are in this moment is also an important part of the spiritual journey. So this episode is interesting, right? It's definitely goes deep on previous relationships and your karmic lessons that you go through them. But I do feel like, February being about love, and I do feel that we are starting to move into a different vibration. For me, the new year is probably more around the spring equinox, but I'm starting to feel a new energy, a new vibration, and attracting love and finding relationships. I guess if you're not in one, is could be a focus for you. We did a whole episode last week on self-love, and if you haven't listened to that, I'd highly recommend it, because for me, a big part of this is also falling in love with you. But as we're getting closer to Valentine's Day, and I'd love, Stacey, for you to talk about your current relationship, how you manifested it, kind of what your learnings are. If somebody's listening and they wanna attract and meet a new partner, first thing I'd always say is fall in love with you, and then be clear on what you're looking for and be open to the universe delivering in whatever way. Stacey, I'd just like to publicly announce I knew this relationship was coming for you before you did. We even had a bet that you still owe me to pay out on, but it's all good. But yeah, I'd love for you to share what's your, you do carry some of your energies from your previous, but what's your learnings? You've taken a brave step of you met somebody in the UK, in Yorkshire of all places, and it's kind of proven its own challenges, right? You have to move here. You're spending 3 months here, but you are doing for something that you feel passionate about. So I'd love for you to share anything you feel is in your heart about manifesting a relationship, and then the challenges of kind of making it work.
Yeah, I mean, I was really focused on working on myself and developing a closer relationship with myself and understanding why I am the way I am, and really going deeper in the self-love journey before I got into this relationship. And I feel that's really important to say, because I think that the mistake a lot of people make is not maximizing the time that they have when they're single, and really embracing it and understanding not just why the relationship before didn't work out, but what role you played in that relationship. And I really took the time to navigate through that before I entered into another relationship. And yes, my current relationship has its challenges, and it's not the dynamic between the two of us, it's the distance. We started out in a space where we weren't romantically involved when we got to know each other. And I really got to know him as a person. And one of the patterns that I feel I've broken is I have always found somebody that needs fixing. And I didn't realize that that was my pattern until reflecting on the previous relationships as a whole and like what they had in common. And it was always me finding somebody who needed some sort of saving or fixing, or had some kind of addiction issue, something underlying that was a problem. And this is the first relationship that I've been in where that doesn't exist. And the relationship is healthy from the first moment that I met him. And yes, there's challenges right now. I live in a different part of the world than he does. And we've been seeing each other for almost 2 years and got engaged. And we've spent more time apart than we have together. But I know that me being here in the UK right now is me exploring what life would look like here and really getting an understanding of what my future would be if this is the path that I choose. And I needed to go through this process because it is such a major life decision.
Just in case anybody wants to know and wants to hear more about Barney, we did do an episode with him, episode 182, so released in November 2024. So if you do want to find out more and learn more about the partner Stace was talking about, beautiful soul named Barney Smith, we did an episode with him. We've known him for a few years, as Stace was saying. I've known him too. And if you want to learn more about him, then go and listen. That is probably what Stacey, just so you know, it's probably the episode, apart from the monthly Akashic messages, it's probably the episode I got the most feedback on, just so you know. Through the whole episode, we don't talk about you guys being together, and just near the end, I'm like, wait, hold on, we haven't actually talked about that. So I ask you both about it, and it's just, it's a beautiful episode. Go and take a listen. It is an interesting time, and it's just that, Stace talked about doing the work on herself, and it is important, right? It's that if you don't love yourself, how can you expect somebody else to love you? And checking in with your intentions about why you want to be in a relationship is also important. In terms of, are you looking for somebody to complete you? But you're already complete. Everything you need is inside. And understanding and manifesting a partner that's going to hold your space, that's going to be potentially different. That doesn't always have to be the case. But having balance, Stace very vulnerably just shared that all her relationships in the past, she's always had to fix things. I mean, I guess we've all got healing to do, right? But, she means some deep healing that needs to be done by the other. And it's like, was that what she was attracting? Is that what she was meant to do? Probably. But she's in a different space, a different energy now, right? And it's just knowing where you're at and what you want to attract, but actually making sure that you love you are all really important steps. I mean, I know with all my long-term relationships, I've learned something, I've integrated something. I also know that in my early days, I probably ended relationships too soon, maybe. I mean, it's never karmically and spiritually. Whenever I ended them. But I have a feeling that there was always, I wanted freedom to experience whatever my soul was here to experience. So that's what I made sure I did. But I didn't know I was doing it. So asking yourself what your learnings were, but also what your soul is here to experience, also allows you to kind of manifest the right partner. Am I open to being in a relationship? 100%. Have I spent time being comfortable with being on my own? Yeah, I love my own company. Is there times where I wish I had a partner to share things? Yes, it is. But at the same time, I love my own company. So it's really finding that balance. And I'm in a space now where I just trust whatever's coming next. Yeah, I'm working on manifesting a partner, but at the same time, I trust in my own divine journey and whatever that holds. So, as we talk about this and we go back, self-love is the foundation for attracting relationships. Integrating your lessons from past relationships is super, super important. Releasing those past soul contracts. I love calling Archangel Michael for allowing me to cut energetic connections that I still have in my world. It's an intention, right? You could sit here and say the words, but your intention has to be to let go. Because sometimes we hold energetically onto old relationships. Even if we're not with the person, we still, there's a part of us that is still with that person. So letting go and cutting the cords, there's lots of ways of doing it available online. I love to keep it simple and just call on Archangel Michael to cut any cords that no longer serve me, that are complete, and release any contracts, any agreements, any promises, any patterns that no longer serve me. I let them all go. But yeah, this journey of love, connecting with love, and if you're alone on Valentine's Day, embrace it. Go on a date with yourself. Fall in love with you. And of course, if you're with somebody, then embrace that connection. But be clear on what you're learning. Ask about your soul contract and what you're here to really learn. And there are so many tools available of asking yourself those questions and really getting to know you. Of course, you can book an Akashic record reading with us and learn more about your relationships and whatever comes up. We can't guarantee what comes through, right? It's very much up to your guides. But if you could have fun with this, with understanding your journey, understanding your connection with love, and I know there's pain there, but also if you could understand the pain that you experience, maybe things start to come easier. So Stacey, what's your advice and for anyone that maybe, for both anyone that is alone, that maybe is looking for somebody and feeling lonely during this time and wanting to manifest, but also what's your advice if somebody's in a loving relationship? What are you going to do to nurture your love, and what's your plans on Valentine's Day? Two different questions. Over to you, Stacey.
So I really believe that the key to combating the loneliness is to nurture a stronger connection with yourself. And it means spending time with yourself. It means falling in love with the version of you that exists right now and accepting who you are. And then I also think that if you're looking to bring someone into your life, there's power in manifesting. What do you want in a partner? Connecting with the energy of what it would look like to be with a partner that meets your level of healing, that is healthy, that is balanced, is really important. And so I would absolutely take the time to write it down. And don't say, I want. Speak about it as if it already exists, that you already have it, and connect with what it would feel like to be in a loving relationship that's exactly what you need and what you want in your life. What was the other question, buddy?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. But the question was, if you're in a loving relationship, what are you going to do to nurture? What's your plans for Valentine's, and what would your recommendation be to anyone in a loving relationship to make sure that they're learning the lessons and nurturing it?
I think communication is so important. Not just the relationship that you have with yourself, but the relationship you have with your partner, and making sure that you're communicating on a regular basis. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about a long distance relationship is that our relationship has relied mostly on communication because of the distance between us. And it's given us the space to understand what each other's goals and dreams are and how they align with each other. And that's a beautiful space to be in when you can communicate exactly what you're thinking and feeling with your partner, and staying in that space of solid communication and trust. It's very, very powerful. And as far as plans for Valentine's Day, I haven't had plans for Valentine's Day in quite a while. So I'm looking forward to a meal out and a date night and spending quality time together. I don't take that for granted because we are so far apart on a regular basis. The idea that we get to be together for the holiday is really special. And I plan on making that time about me and him and eliminating any distractions that might get in the way.
I love it. And You know what, Stace? Not manifesting anything for you here, but know that sometimes distractions happen, and you've got to. Sometimes it's our expectations of how maybe Valentine's Day needs to look that sometimes causes us frustration. So I would, I love your advice. I would make those plans. But whatever the universe has plans for us, maybe be open to a different sort of magic. Who knows? But as we close out this episode, I want to kind of just summarize some of the questions we were asked, because if you're in this space and you're feeling lonely or maybe disconnected, and maybe it's time to shift things anew, and could be an opportunity for you to spend time with you, whether you're in a loving relationship or not, but taking time to understand your relationships, your soul contracts, for me is super important. They help you understand what you're here to experience. And just some questions to ponder that we've shared on this episode. What relationships has taught me about myself? What's the relationships, the deeper relationships you had in your life? What have they taught you? What patterns keep repeating in my life, and what are they teaching me? Have I been in a relationship where I knew it was time to leave but struggled? Am I in a relationship now where my soul contract may be complete and I'm struggling to leave? What's my lesson? How can I heal and honor past relationships without holding on to their energy? And if you're looking for a partner, am I choosing love from a place of wholeness or fear of being alone? All your answers are in you. So take time to truly understand you. Are you comfortable spending time with you? Have you fallen in love with you? For me, that self-love is really important, because otherwise it means you are going to attract relationships that are going to cause you some sort of pain, because if you're looking for that love outside of you, then it is going to be a codependency. And for me, balancing relationships is really, really important. So Stacey, as we close out this episode, anything you want to share, maybe any additional journal prompts or any advice you have during this month of love, this week of love, this week of Valentine's, anything you want to share is over to you.
So I love the journal prompts that you just listed off. I think those would be really powerful for anybody to take the time to journal about. And I would just encourage you, if you're in a season of loneliness, to do everything you can to pour into yourself. There is nothing that a partner can give you that you can't give to you. And I think it's really important to nurture that connection with yourself, especially if you want to have a partner in your life. By nurturing yourself, you're a better partner for that person when the time comes that they come into your life. And I think it's so important that we make sure that we're a good and healthy person before we enter into a relationship. So I would encourage you to take that time to really nurture the relationship with yourself and see what you can do to improve on that relationship in order to be better prepared and equipped for what's ahead.
Thank you, Stace. So beautifully said. I love the work we get to do. And so if you feel inclined to reach out to us, book an Akashic record reading, we can give you some insight into your soul contracts. We also have a beautiful mentorship program, which we help you to understand who you are. We help you to understand what your programming is. We help you to really understand what your why is and what you're here to achieve on this planet. We love it. We love it. It goes deep. It should come with a health warning, because we do take you on a deep journey. But sometimes you have to do that deep healing to truly understand why you're here. So if there's something we've said that resonates, you can, like I said, either book an Akashic record reading, or you can book a free discovery call, and we'll take you through the mentorship program. You can choose to work with both of us and any one of us individually. I'll always say, whatever you choose to do is a soul contract. So feel it. What's in your heart? If you're going to book a reading, then check in with your intention, because if you're here to be fixed, you're not here to fix anybody. We're here to guide people. This episode is released on the 10th. On the 11th, i.e. tomorrow, we do have a full moon webinar. We do it once a month. It's free. I'll include the link in the show notes. It's a 90-minute session. We'll have a conscious conversation. I'm sure there's an element of talking about love that's going to be included. and I'll do a guided meditation, and we'll open the Akashic records, and both me and Stacey will channel and share a message. It's free. I've released a meditation, the Akashic message from previous episodes. Your name won't be shared. I don't share the screen. I only share the audio. It's a really healing space. We love doing it. It's something that we do once a month. It's one of my favorite things to do. So lots of opportunities to work with us. If something we said resonates, reach out. Definitely do join the Zoom. If you've listened to this on a Monday and it's not too late, definitely do join us. And if you can't join us, if you missed this February, we'll do another one in March. So please do join us. It really is a beautiful healing energy in space. Thank you, Stace, for sharing this journey with me. I cherish the soul contract we have and the partnership we have. As we were talking about earlier, not all soul contracts are relationship, and not all friendships, have to be turned into a relationship. A lot of them are platonic too, but also here to expand us and here to teach us something. And our connection and the work we've done has definitely expanded me too. So it's always fun along the way, but sending so much love and light out to everybody at this time and at all times, but truly fall in love with you, spend time with you, celebrate you. If you are alone on Valentine's Day, then enjoy whatever you're going to do with you. Do something that lifts your soul, that lifts your vibration. And Stacey, I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Thank you so much for another powerful episode. I agree with Nims. It's time to fall in love with you. When you fall in love with you, you raise the bar for whoever you bring into your life. And that can be a really beautiful thing. Thanks for being with us again on this episode. We look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.
Sending love and light. Bye for now.